also horrible. I didn't know this. The way is only apparently clear. The desert is only apparently empty. It seems inhabited by magical beings who murderously attach themselves to me and demonically change my form. I have evidently taken on a completely monstrous form in which I can no longer recognize myself. It seems to me that I have become a monstrous animal form for which I have exchanged my humanity. This way is surrounded by hellish magic. Invisible nooses have been thrown over me and ensnare me. But the spirit of the depths approached me and said, "Climb down into your depths, sink." But I was indignant at him and said, "How can I sink? I am unable to do this myself." Then the spirit spoke words to me that appeared ridiculous, and he said, "Sit yourself down and be calm." But I cried out indignantly, "How frightful! It sounds like nonsense. Do you also demand this of me? You overthrew the mighty gods who mean the most to us. My soul, where are you? Have I entrusted myself to a stupid animal? Do I stagger like a drunkard to the grave? Do I stammer stupidities like a lunatic? Is this your way, my soul? The blood boils in me, and I would strangle you if I could seize you. You weave the thickest darknesses, and I am like a madman caught in your net. But I yearn, teach me. But my soul spoke to me, saying, "My path is light." Yet I indignantly answered, "Do you call light what we men call the worst darkness? Do you call day night?" To this my soul spoke a word that roused my anger. "My light is not of this world." The soul answered, "Should it not exist because you know nothing of it?" Aye, but our knowledge, does our knowledge also not hold good for you? What is it going to be if not knowledge? Where is security? Where is solid ground? Where is light? Your darkness is not only darker than night, but bottomless as well. If it's not going to be knowledge, then perhaps it will do without speech and words too. My soul, no words. Aye, forgive me, perhaps I'm hard of hearing, perhaps I misinterpret you, perhaps in self-deceit and monkey business, and I am a rascal grinning at myself in a mirror, a fool in my own madhouse. Perhaps you stumble over my folly. My soul, you delude yourself, you do not deceive me. Your words are lies to you, not me. Aye, but could I wallow in raging nonsense and hatch absurdity and perverse monotony? My soul, who gives you thoughts and words? Do you make them? Are you not my serf, a recipient who lies at my door and picks up my alms? And you dare to think that what you devise and speak could be nonsense? Don't you know yet that it comes from me and belongs to me? So I cried, full of anger. But then my indignation must also come from you, and in me you are indignant against yourself. My soul then spoke the ambiguous words, "That is civil war." I was afflicted with pain and rage, and I answered back, "How painful, my soul, to hear you use hollow words. I feel sick. Comedy and drivel, but I yearn. I can also crawl through mud at the most despised banality. I can also eat dust. That is part of hell. I do not yield. I am defiant. You can go on devising torment, spider-legged monsters, ridiculous, hideous, frightful theatrical spectacles. Come close. I am ready. Ready, my soul, you who are a devil, to wrestle with you too. You donned the mask of a god, and I worshipped you. Now you wear the mask of a devil, a frightful one, the mask of the banal, of eternal mediocrity. Only one favor. Give me a moment to step back and consider. Is the struggle with this mask worthwhile? Was the mask of God worth worshiping? I cannot do it. The lust for battle burns in my limbs. No, I cannot leave the battlefield defeated. I want to seize you, crush you, monkey buffoon. Woe if the struggle is unequal. My hands grab at air, but your blows are also air, and I perceive trickery. There's a footnote at the point where the soul says to Dr. Jung, that is civil war. The footnote reads, Black Book 2 continues. Are you neurotic? Are we neurotic? Going on, I find myself again on the desert path. It was a desert vision, a vision of the solitary who has wandered down long roads. There lurk invisible robbers and assassins and shooters of poison darts. Suppose the murderous arrow is sticking in my heart. As the first vision had predicted to me, the assassin appeared from the depths and came to me just as in the fate of the peoples of this time, and came to me just as in the fate of the peoples of this time. A nameless one appeared and leveled the murder weapon at the prince. Footnote. This is a reference to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I felt myself transformed into a rapacious beast. My heart glowered in rage against the high and the beloved, against my prince and hero, just as the nameless one of the people, driven by greed for murder, lunged at his dear prince. Because I carried the war in me, I foresaw it. I felt betrayed and lied to by my king. Why did I feel this way? He was not as I had wished him to be. He was other than I expected. He should be the king in my sense, not in his sense. He should be what I called ideal. My soul appeared to me hollow, tasteless, and meaningless, but in reality what I thought of her was valid for my ideal. It was a vision of the desert. I struggled with mirror images of myself. It was civil war in me. I myself was the murderer and the murdered. The deadly arrow was struck in my heart, and I did not know what it meant. My thoughts were murder and the fear of death, which spread like poison everywhere in my body. And thus the fate of the people. The murder of one was the poisonous arrow that flew into the hearts of men and kindled the fiercest war. The murder is the indignation of incapacity against will, a Judas betrayal that one would like someone else to have committed. Footnote, the draft continues, but just as Judas is a necessary link in the chain of the work of redemption, so is our Judas betrayal of the hero also a necessary passageway to redemption. In Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, Jung discussed the view of Abbe Auger in Anatole France's story Le Jardin d'Epicure, who maintained that God had chosen Judas as an instrument to complete Christ's work of redemption. Going on, we are still seeking the goat that should bear our sin. Footnote, Leviticus 16, 7 through 10. And he shall take the two goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat, on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat, shall be presented alive before the Lord to make an atonement with him, and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. Going on, everything that becomes too old becomes evil. The same is true of your highest. Learn from the suffering of the crucified God that one can also betray and crucify a God. namely the God of the old year. If a God ceases being the way of life, he must fall secretly. The God becomes sick if he oversteps the light of the zenith. That is why the spirit of the depths took me when the spirit of this time had led me to the summit. Footnote: those who wander in the desert experience everything that belongs to the desert. The ancients have described this to us. From them we can learn. Open the ancient books and learn what will come to you in solitude. Everything will be given to you, and you will be spared nothing, the mercy and the torment. Today I'm going to take up the next section of the Red Book by C.G. Jung. It's entitled Murder of the Hero. This is not such an easy section of the book to understand, keeping in mind that the Red Book is about visions and active imaginations that Dr. Jung was having in 1913 and 1914, which predicted World War I. In order to explain the significance of this, I'm also going to be reading from Dr. Edward Edinger's book, Transformation of the Libido, which relates to Dr. Edinger's lectures on symbols of transformation, volume 5 of Dr. Jung's collected works. And I'm also going to be referring to Memories, Dreams, Reflections, which is Dr. Jung's memoirs of his psychic changes over his lifetime. So the Red Book and Memories, Dreams, Reflections are like bookends into Dr. Jung's prodigious scholarship, reflection, and writing on the nature of the psyche. We have to remember that at the time of the Red Book, Dr. Jung was emotionally very upset by a variety of things that were happening in his life. And what he didn't understand in the fall of 1913 was he was also very attuned to the collective unconscious of Europe at that time. And he was having very bloody visions, and those visions were frightening to him because he had had a lot of experience with psychotics and schizophrenics in the Bergholzli mental hospital in Zurich, and he thought he might be having a psychotic breakdown. And these visions were very bloody indeed. I've talked about them a little before, so I'll leave that discussion for those videos. But it turns out that this segment of the Red Book really is the beginning of Dr. Jung's ideas about changes in attitude and what it takes to change the attitude of the public mind. In 2014, I wrote a book called Political Psychology: New Ideas for Activists. And in that book, I wrote an essay called There Will Be Blood. I'll put a link to that essay with the commentary of this essay so that you can find it. This is on a new channel that I'm creating based on my book, which is called Political Psychology. I urge you to take a look at that YouTube channel. It is just beginning, and I would very much appreciate it if you would subscribe and click on the little bell next to the subscription on the Political Psychology channel. That will indicate to me that you're interested in hearing more about what I think about political psychology. Now, this segment of the Red Book is about changes in attitude, and what Dr. Jung is talking about is not only a change of his own attitude, but the existence of an attitude in the collective unconscious of the German people. And the sad thing is that he recognized what was happening, but no one else paid much attention to him. and his understandings about the depth psychology of societies. And so he was going through the Red Book period during World War I. He recognized the collective unconscious, and by 1919, he already was able to predict that World War II would come, even before the rise of Adolf Hitler. So this change of attitude segment of the Red Book is extraordinarily important, and it's important to us today because what it says to us is that some of us who are intuitive enough can already predict how certain political decisions are going to ultimately come down and what it will take to change things. I'm thinking particularly about the gun debate, about abortion debate, about many other decisions in American political life that contain attitude, and attitude doesn't change easily. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand what it has taken to change human attitudes over the centuries, and why all the incessant harangues that we get on our cable networks, regardless of what our political position is, have very little effect on our attitudes. Those of us who are intuitive, if we sit quietly by ourselves, can know what the ultimate result will be and what it will take to make the changes we hope for. So keeping in mind now, this segment is called Murder of the Hero. And in this case, the footnote tells us that this refers to the mourning for the death of the hero. I'm going to read the passage directly through, and then read some of the footnotes that Sonu Shamdasani put in the reader's edition of the Red Book. Then I'll read what Dr. Edinger has to say about it. And finally, I'll read what Dr. Jung said at the end of his life in Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Dr. Jung was having this vision on December 18th, 1913. So approximately 8 months before the outbreak of World War I. Murder of the hero. On the following night, however, I had a vision. I was with a youth in high mountains. It was before daybreak. The eastern sky was already light. Then Siegfried's horn resounded over the mountains with a jubilant sound. We knew that our mortal enemy was coming. We were armed and lurked beside a narrow rocky path to murder him. Then we saw him coming across the mountains on a chariot made of the bones of the dead. He drove boldly and magnificently over the steep rocks and arrived at the narrow path where we waited in hiding. As he came around the turn ahead of us, we fired at the same time, and he fell slain. Thereupon I turned to flee, and a terrible rain swept down. But after this, I went through a torment unto death, and I felt certain that I must kill myself if I could not solve the riddle of the murder of the hero. Then the spirit of the depths came to me and spoke these words. The highest truth is one and the same with the absurd. This statement saved me, and like rain after a long hot spell, it swept away everything in me that was too highly tensed. Then I had a second vision. I saw a merry garden in which forms walked clad in white silk, all covered in colored light, some reddish, the other bluish and greenish. I know I have stridden across the depths. Through guilt I have become a newborn. We also live in our dreams. We do not live only by day. Sometimes we accomplish our greatest deeds in dreams. In that night, my life was threatened, since I had to kill my Lord and God, not in single combat, since who among mortals could kill a god in a duel? You can reach your God only as an assassin, if you want to overcome him. But this is the bitterest for mortal men. Our gods want to be overcome, since they required renewal. If men kill their princes, They do so because they cannot kill their gods, and because they do not know that they should kill their gods in themselves. If the god grows old, he becomes shadow, nonsense, and he goes down. The greatest truth becomes the greatest lie. The brightest day becomes darkest night. As day requires night and night requires day, so meaning requires absurdity, and absurdity requires meaning. Day does not exist through itself. Night does not exist through itself. The reality that exists through itself is day and night. So the reality is meaning and absurdity. Noon is a moment. Midnight is a moment. Morning comes from night. Evening turns into night. But evening comes from the day, and morning turns into day. So meaning is a moment and a transition from absurdity to absurdity, and absurdity only a moment and a transition from meaning to meaning. Oh, that Siegfried, blonde and blue-eyed, the German hero, had to fall by my hand, the most loyal and courageous. He had everything in himself that I treasured as the greater and more beautiful. He was my power, my boldness, my pride. I would have gone under in the same battle, and so only assassination was left to me. If I wanted to go on living, it could only be through trickery and cunning. Judge not. Think of the blonde savage of the German forests, who had to betray the hammer-brandishing thunder to the pale Near Eastern god who was nailed to the wood like a chicken martin. The courageous were overcome by a certain contempt for themselves, but their life force bade them to go on living, and they betrayed their beautiful wild gods, their holy trees, and their awe of the German forests. What does Siegfried mean for the Germans? What does it tell us that the Germans suffer Siegfried's death? That is why I almost preferred to kill myself in order to spare him. But I wanted to go on living with the new God. After death on the cross, Christ went into the underworld and became hell. So he took on the form of the Antichrist, the dragon, the image of the Antichrist, which has come down to us from the ancients, announces the new God, whose coming the ancients had foreseen. Gods are unavoidable. The more you flee from the God, the more surely you fall into his hand. The rain is the great stream of tears that will come over the peoples, the tearful flood of released tension. After the constriction of death had encumbered the peoples with horrific force, it is the mourning of the dead in me which precedes burial and rebirth. The rain is the fructifying of the earth. It begets the new wheat, the young, germinating God. Footnotes. Going back to the beginning, right at the beginning, Dr. Jung says, on the following night, however, I had a vision. This footnote, December 18th, 1913, Black Book 2 has, quote, the following night was terrible. I soon awoke from a frightful dream. The draft has, quote, a mighty dream vision rose from the depths, unquote.
At that point, it comes down
the Red Book says, then Siegfried's horn resounded over the mountains with a jubilant sound.
I ain't getting in that.
Siegfried was a heroic prince who appears in Old German and Norse epics. In the 12th century, he is described as follows, quote, and in what magnificent style Siegfried rode. He bore a great spear, stout of shaft and broad of head. His handsome sword reached down to his spur, and the fine horn which this lord carried was of reddest gold. His wife, Brunhild, is tricked into revealing the only place where he could be wounded and killed. Wagner reworked this epic in The Ring of the Nibelung. In 1912, in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, Jung presented a psychological interpretation of Siegfried as a symbol of the libido, principally citing Wagner's libretto in Siegfried. The text says, "But after this I went through a torment unto death." The footnote says, "The draft continues after this dream vision. And I felt certain that I must kill myself if I could not solve the riddle of the murder of the hero." Footnote, in Black Book 2, Jung noted, "I strode light-footedly up an incredible steep path and later helped my wife, who followed me at a slower pace, to ascend. Some people mocked us, but I did. This showed that they didn't know that I had murdered the hero." Jung recounted this dream in the 1925 seminar, stressing different details. He preceded it with the following remarks, quote, "Siegfried was not an especially sympathetic figure to me, and I don't know why my unconscious got engrossed in him. Wagner's Siegfried, especially, is exaggeratedly extroverted, and at times actually ridiculous. I never liked him. Nevertheless, the dream showed him to be my hero. I could not understand the strong emotion I had with the dream." After narrating the dream, Jung concluded, quote, "I felt an enormous pity for him, Siegfried, as though I myself had been shot. I must then have had a hero I did not appreciate, and it was my ideal of force and efficiency I had killed. I had killed my intellect, helped on to the deed by a personification of the collective unconscious, the little brown man with me. In other words, I deposed my superior function. The rain that fell is a symbol of the release of tension. That is, the forces of the unconscious are loosed. When this happens, the feeling of relief is engendered. The crime is expiated because as soon as the main function is deposed, there is a chance for other sides of the personality to be born into life." That quote is from Introduction to Jungian Psychology, pages 61 and 62. In Black Book 2, and in his later remarks about the dream and memories, page 204, Jung said that he felt that he would have to kill himself if he could not solve this riddle. Now, what Dr. Jung is talking about is his superior function, which was his thinking function. But his thinking function was controlling him, as Logos frequently controls our politics today. But in order to have wholeness, we need to include both Logos and Eros, both logic, rationality, and life. And what Dr. Jung was experiencing was that his Logos side was overwhelming him. Siegfried in this dream was a personification of his Logos, and his point was that in order to open himself up to life, to Eros, he had to kill the Logos. This allowed wholeness to enter into his being. This is a fundamental idea in Dr. Jung's oeuvre that isn't well understood. The text continued, "Then I had a second vision." Footnote, quote, "I fell asleep again and a second dream vision rose in me," unquote. "I saw a merry garden in which forms walked clad in white silk, all covered in colored light, some reddish, the others bluish and greenish." Footnote, the draft continues, "These lights pervaded my mind and senses, and once again I fell asleep like a convalescent." Jung recounted this dream to Agnella Jaffe and commented that after he had been confronted with the shadow, as in the Siegfried dream, this dream expressed the idea that he was one thing and something else at the same time. The unconscious reached beyond one, like a saint's halo. The shadow was like the light-colored sphere that surrounded the people. He thought this was a vision of the beyond, where people are complete. In the text, "I know I have stridden across the depths. Through guilt I have become a newborn." Footnote, the draft continues, "The world in between is a world of the simplest things. It is not a world of intention and imperatives, but a perchance world with indefinite possibilities. Here the next ways are all small, no broad, straight highroads, no heaven above them, no hell beneath. In October 1916, Jung gave some talks to the Psychological Club of Zurich called Adaptation, Individuation, and Collectivity, in which he commented on the importance of guilt. The first step in individuation is tragic guilt. The accumulation of guilt demands expiation. The text continues. We also live in our dreams. We do not live only by day. Sometimes we accomplish our greatest deeds in dreams. Footnote. The draft has here an addition, quote, are you smiling? The spirit of this time would want to make you believe that the depths are no world and no reality. We have certainly seen this quite clearly in the way the spirit of this time, 100 years ago, but also through the following century, has suppressed Dr. Jung's work. The spirit of this time would want to make you believe that the depths are no world and no reality. The text says, you can reach your God only as an assassin. Footnote, the draft continues, quote, a Judas, unquote. The text says, so meaning is a moment and a transition from absurdity to absurdity, and absurdity only a moment and a transition from meaning to meaning. We all might want to remember that in the politics of the United States just now. Footnote, the draft continues. My dream vision showed me that I was not alone when I committed the deed. I was helped by a youth, that is, one who was younger than me, a rejuvenated version of myself. Where the text says, but their life force bade them go on living, and they betrayed their beautiful wild gods, their holy trees, and their awe of the German forests. Footnote, the draft continues, quote, Siegfried had to die just like Wotan. In 1918, Jung wrote of the effects of the introduction of Christianity into Germany. Christianity split the German barbarian into his upper and lower halves and enabled him, by repressing the dark side, to domesticate the brighter half and fit it for culture. But the lower, darker half still awaits redemption and a second domestication. Until then, it will remain associated with vestiges of prehistory, with the collective unconscious, which must indicate a peculiar and increasing activation of the collective unconscious. He expanded on this situation in his essay, Wotan, in 1936. Now, all this relates to one of Dr. Jung's most famous quotes, which is, too much of the animal distorts civilized man. Too much civilization makes sick animals. The text goes on, but I wanted to go on living with a new God. Footnote, in the draft, this sentence reads, we want to continue living with a new God, a hero beyond Christ. To Aniela Jaffe, he recounted that he had thought of himself as an overcoming hero, but the dream indicated that the hero had to be killed. This exaggeration of the will was represented by the Germans at that time, such as by the Siegfried line. A voice within him said, if you do not understand the dream, you must shoot yourself. The original Siegfried line was a defensive line established by the Germans in northern France in 1917. This was actually a subsection of the Hindenburg line. The text concludes, the rain is the fructifying of the earth. It begets the new wheat, the young germinating God. Footnote, the theme of the dying and the resurrecting God features prominently in James Fraser's The Golden Bough, a study in magic and religion, which Jung drew upon in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido. Now I'm going to go to Dr. Edward Edinger's discussion of it in Transformations of the Libido. On page 65, Dr. Edinger says, what is needed, rather than a heroic ego, is a Jungian ego. I'll tell you why I use that term. This myth, and that is the reason I went into it so specifically, belongs very explicitly to Jung. The reason we know that is from Memories, Dreams, Reflections, and the dream that he reports there on page 180. He had this dream in 1913, just as he was having his full encounter with the unconscious. Jung was extremely bothered by this dream. Finally, its meaning came to him, quote, why, that is the problem that is being played out in the world. Siegfried, I thought, represents what the Germans want to achieve, heroically to impose their will, have their own way. Where there is a will, there is a way. I had wanted to do the same, but now that was no longer possible. The dream showed that the attitude, embodied by Siegfried, the hero, no longer suited me. Therefore, it had to be killed. Unquote. The attitude of the heroic ego is only relevant for the first half of life. When one comes to the second half of life, where conscious individuation is required, then the heroic attitude has to die, as the myth makes clear. The ego, in its heroic way, can grab what it wants, but it does not know what to do with it. It becomes possessed by it. So in our materialistic world, for example, the ego could say, well, I want to have a Mercedes in my driveway. But the ego doesn't know what to do with it, because once it has it, then you have to realize that it is just a vehicle with four wheels and it needs oil changes just like any other car. Edinger goes on, there are different ways of dealing with the unconscious as monster. Jung describes these ways and says in paragraph 571 of Symbols of Transformation of the Libido, in Rome, money offerings were thrown every year into the Lacus Curtius, formerly a chasm that had been closed through the sacrificial death of Curtius. He was the hero who went down to the underworld in order to conquer the danger that threatened the Roman state after the opening of the chasm. This is not one of our better-known myths, so I thought I would say a word about it. The mythical story is that some great earthquake or violent event caused a great opening in the middle of the Roman Forum. It went so deep that nothing would fill it up, and the soothsayers declared that if the Romans wished the Commonwealth to be everlasting, they must devote to this chasm the principal strength of the Roman people. Curtius, on hearing this answer, said the most valuable thing belonging to the Roman people is their arms and their courage. They agreed with him, so he arrayed himself in full armor, mounted his horse, and plunged into the chasm. At that point, the earth immediately closed over him. What is being said here? The soothsayers told the Roman people to devote to this chasm what constituted their principal strength, their arms and their courage, in other words, their heroic Roman attitude. That is the essential nature of Rome at its peak. It is the attitude of the triumphant ego, ego power. The myth is true, but Rome did not follow it consciously, and so it had to go down to destruction. The heroic ego, representing the arms and courage and power of Rome, personified by the hero Curtius, offered itself as a sacrifice, and that closed the chasm. The psychological reference is that when the chasm of the unconscious opens up to the ego and threatens to swallow it, the way the ego succeeds in closing it and coming to terms with it is by sacrificing the heroic ego attitude. That is the way it is done, and that is the way Jung did it. As the unconscious opened up in a threatening way, he had this dream of killing Siegfried that saved him. It is an exact replica of the myth of Curtius. It is a very fundamental image, and there may come a time when you need to remember it. So finally, I want to read what Jung said at the end of his life in Memory Streams Reflections, page 180. Filled with disgust and remorse for having destroyed something so great and beautiful, I turned to flee, impelled by the fear that the murder might be discovered. But the tremendous downfall of rain began, and I knew that it would wipe out all traces of the dead. I had escaped the danger of discovery. Life could go on, but an unbearable feeling of guilt remained. When I awoke from the dream, I turned it over in my mind, but was unable to understand it. I tried, therefore, to fall asleep again, but a voice within me said, "You must understand the dream, and you must do so at once." The inner urgency mounted until the terrible memory came. The voice said, "If you do not understand the dream, you must shoot yourself."
Oh, Jesus.
In the drawer of my night table lay a loaded revolver, and I became frightened. Then I began pondering once again, and suddenly the meaning of the dream dawned on me. Why, that is the problem that is being played out in the world. Siegfried, I thought, represents what the Germans want to achieve, heroically to impose their will, have their own way. Where there is a will, there is a way. I had wanted to do the same, but now that was no longer possible. The dream showed that the attitude embodied by Siegfried, the hero, no longer suited me. Therefore, it had to be killed. What we're talking about here is a time of midlife crisis for Dr. Jung. After the deed, I felt an overpowering compassion, as though I myself had been shot, a sign of my secret identity with Siegfried, as well as the grief a man feels when he is forced to sacrifice his ideal and his conscious attitudes. This identity, my heroic idealism, had to be abandoned, for there are higher things than the ego's will, and to these one must bow. These thoughts sufficed for the present, and I fell asleep again. The small brown-skinned savage who accompanied me and had actually taken the initiative in the killing was an embodiment of the primitive shadow. The rain showed that the tension between consciousness and the unconscious was being resolved. Although at the time I was not able to understand the meaning of the dream beyond these few hints, new forces were released in me which helped me carry the experiment with the unconscious to a conclusion. As you probably know, Dr. Jung continued with his confrontation with the unconscious for another 5 years. And it took him another 10 years after that to record everything in the Red Book. This is why the Red Book is such a significant book for understanding Dr. Jung's work. I hope this broad discussion has been helpful in understanding what seems a very strange passage in the Red Book.
What would be a practical approach for developing your shadow? Well, that's a good one. Let's do a little review of Jungian psychology. The first thing is, if you want to know about this, the proper source is Carl Jung's Collected Works, Volume 9, and there's 2 parts to Volume 9, A and B, published as separate texts. And Volume 9 is called Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, and the other one is called Ion. But in Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, there's a good discussion of the persona and the shadow. And the persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You know, you watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with the women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona. And a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say harmless, but we could say a good person. But a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance. I read this interesting commentary a little while ago on a statement by Christ in the New Testament, and the statement generally interpreted is that the meek shall inherit the earth, but I was looking up the multiple translations of the word meek, and meek is actually derived from a Greek word, of course, because the Bible, at least some of the original forms of the Bible, were in Greek. And that word didn't exactly mean meek. It meant something like those who have weapons and the ability to use them, but determined to keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that means that people who are capable of force, let's say, but decide not to use it, are in the proper moral position. And Nietzsche commented on that a fair bit too. You know, he thought of most morality as cowardice, not because morality itself was cowardice, but because most people who are cowards disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be harmful, say, or to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity. And that's a really bad idea. So, you know, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So now, with regards to, so that's the persona. And the persona is the mask that you wear, and that's what persona means, is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming. You know, and you might think, well, that's a bit of an overstatement, but Jung was very interested in phenomena such as, say, the psychological phenomena that would characterize the actions of someone who might be an Auschwitz camp guard, for example. And, you know, that's a pretty monstrous form of behavior. And the thing about Auschwitz camp guards is that there's no reason to assume, really, that they were much different than normal people. Now, there would have been exceptions, obviously, and what that means is that perhaps you too could be an Auschwitz camp guard, and perhaps you would even derive some enjoyment out of it, and you might think not, but you shouldn't think not so quickly. And what that also implies is that if you could see what that meant when you looked in the mirror and looked at yourself, you might run away screaming, because you'd have a revelation of just exactly what the human being is capable of. And that's a very unpleasant revelation, and also one of the things that stops people from being enlightened, because that revelation of the evil of the self is part of the journey to enlightenment, and an early part. Now, the shadow would be all the parts of the personality that the persona rejects, and that might be the aggressive elements. Certainly, that's the case for people who are hyper-agreeable. And now you can tell, I think one of the best, there's two pathways to the development of the shadow, and they're tightly aligned with one another. The fundamental pathway is truth, and that's to face the bitter truth about yourself. But to break that down more particularly, you might think about that as the capacity to observe your own resentment. You're going to be resentful and bitter in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you watch that resentment, bitterness, you'll see that it produces fantasies that can be unbelievably dark. And that can be very frightening, and you might not want to admit to yourself that you're actually capable of having fantasies like that, or impulses like that, or aggressive feelings like that. But the thing is that if those aggressive feelings and impulses and fantasies are integrated into your character, it's like you're opening up a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very forceful and strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous, because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. And it's often weak people. For example, it's weak men, generally speaking, who rape. You know, that's a very, very common occurrence, and that's a violent act, but it's born out of weakness, not out of strength, that's for sure. And so, anyways, you attend to your resentment honestly, and you observe yourself and what you're actually like. You got to pay attention as if you don't know yourself, as if you might harbor hidden devils, and then maybe they'll emerge. Now, Jung also felt that sort of embedded inside the shadow were the contrasexual tendencies. And so, for example, sometimes you see people who are well-developed, men, let's say, and we can also talk about women in this regard. Men who've integrated their shadow often also develop a kind of peculiar grace that would be a consequence of not only allowing their aggressive side to step forward, but also their their feminine and compassionate side that they may have kept squelched because of embarrassment about it, or because they've been harassed for being weak, or any number of things. So, but the practical approach for developing your shadow, I would say, is to contemplate and consider your resentment and notice what it says. And because your resentment will also tell you what you have to say. So look at what happened in Google this weekend. James Damore wrote that memo, and you can imagine he was pretty angry and perhaps even somewhat resentful at having to attend that diversity seminar. And I'm really just using this as an example. But what he did was decide that meant that he had something that he had to say. And then look at the consequences of that, man. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so, if you're feeling oppressed at work, or you're oppressed in your life, or you're oppressing yourself, then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter, and maybe even like Cain in the story of Cain and Abel, because Cain is sort of the archetypal bitter man. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness. And that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it. Because you might be wrong, and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny, and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. And so many workplaces become toxic, to use a terrible cliche, because the people in them won't speak up for what they actually want, or they speak up too late, and then they're all twisted up about it, and they're torturing other people because they're so unhappy, and so forth and so on. So, practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty. And Jung said that a genuine moral effort was a good substitute for psychotherapy.
Well, oh, you are beautiful.
You said that a marriage must be based on trust and transparency and being shackled together. How and for how long should you get to know someone? How to set a foundation? Oh well, there's no simple answer to that. I think that you should know someone well enough so that you know if you can negotiate with them, and so that you have started to formulate a vision of your joint future that you can both look forward to with enthusiasm and confidence. So, and of course that's going to depend to some degree on your level of maturity, but that means you've considered such things as, do you have a sufficient number of joint interests, and are you oriented in the same direction with regards to how you're going to handle your joint careers and the possibility of children and the manner in which you're going to interact with your in-laws. And you have to start thinking about, you have to start considering your life together from the perspective of practicality and economics, I would say. So it can't just be that massive erotic attraction that's associated with love. Although I think that's extraordinarily important, and you're unbelievably fortunate if you have that, and you should do everything you can to maintain it, and that takes effort. That takes real effort and will. But you need to ally that with maturity and intelligence, and the maturity and intelligence is, okay, we're going to put our lives together. What's that going to look like at the level of detail? How are we going to handle our finances? Where are we going to live? What are our joint plans going to be, etc. One of the things that my business partners and I plan to do in what would you say, that in as an analog to the self-authoring suite, is that we want to develop an online program to help people negotiate their relationships. And so it would actually provide an answer to this question in a more comprehensive manner, is that imagine that if you want to set up a household with someone, then there's a lot of things that you need to get straight, and you either do that by bringing your unconscious assumptions to bear on the situation and perhaps clashing where they don't match, or you sit down like a conscious and aware and articulate couple and start to negotiate what your joint responsibilities are going to be. And so that would be, well, who's responsible for the meals and when, and what are you going to eat, and who's going to get groceries, and who's going to pay the bills, and who's going to do which part of what household chores there are to do, and how is that going to be laid out fair. And so you should get to know the person that you're with well enough so that you can start discussing the real practical issues of life and determine whether or not you're capable of negotiating that. And I don't think that necessarily means that you should live together, because the evidence is actually quite strong, at least the last time I looked, that people who live together are more rather than less likely to be divorced. Now that might have nothing to do with the actual act of living together. It might be that people who are more likely to get divorced are also those who are more likely to merely live together. But I don't think that's a great solution for reasons I won't get into now. And with regards to being shackled together, is that that's a complicated one. And I learned this at least in part from reading Carl Jung. And the idea there is that unless you've really made a commitment to someone, like a lifetime commitment, and that's a serious commitment, one that you're not going to back out of, you're not going to take the relationship with the seriousness that's necessary to make it of the highest possible quality and sustainability across the course of your life. And it's really important that it is of that high quality and sustainability, because the relationship, especially when it starts to produce children, is a machine, let's say, a machine that you jointly operate that adds immensely to the quality of your life and the depth of your life. I mean, you have the rope and strand of your life, and your partner has the strands and the rope of his or her life, and then those are tied together to make a stronger rope. And then that unites you across time, and then you undertake massive adventures together, and some of that is the establishment of a household and the establishment of joint careers and the maintenance of each other's mental and physical health and the maintenance of a high quality sexual life and all of that. Very, very challenging to do all of that. And then the joint production and care of children, which sets you up properly for the last half of your life. So like I'm 55 now, and both my kids just got engaged in the last month. So that's pretty bloody amazing. And they're both setting up households, and they're stepping into adulthood, and I'm fortunate enough to have them in the city that I live in. So hooray for me, that's so bloody fortunate that I can hardly believe it. I mean, we've helped them out and tried to make it, what would you say, to make the possibility of their living here be something that's viable. But I'm absolutely thrilled that they're going to be around, and I'm looking forward immensely to having grandchildren. And like, what else are you going to do when you're 55? When you're going to be 55, I might have 40 more years. Like, what am I going to do with those years? Also, I have a good marriage, thank God for that, and that's partly due to the outstanding moral quality of my wife, who I'm also extraordinarily attracted to. And we've built a life together, and we've had kids together, and we're happy with our kids. And we had plenty of struggle with our kids because one of our children, my daughter, had serious health problems, which she seems to have managed to resolve, partly as a consequence of her own brilliance. But we've set ourselves up now so that our children are respectable and mature young adults, so thank God for that. And they've got partners who we both really like, and they're going to have children, and well, hooray, that means that this next part of my life is going to be something that I can advance into with a fair bit of hope and excitement. And the idea of having little kids around again is thrilling because I really like little kids. They're really fun. And so the shackled together is more like it's such a, I may have even said that, but it's such a cynical way of looking at it. It's more like what you've produced is an unbreakable bond between two beings, and that makes both of them better in every way if it's a relationship that's based on trust and genuine communication. That's a very difficult thing to attain because you have to be willing to tell the truth, and the truth is generally a horrible thing. It's easy to tell truth when everyone wants to hear what you have to say, but it's very difficult to tell the truth when no one wants to hear it, least of all yourself. And so marriage gets a very bad rap in our culture, and so does child rearing. And I think that's absolute catastrophe because really being in a long-term relationship, a marriage, let's say, and having children, that's 2/3 of your life. Even if you're a highly career-oriented person, that's 2/3 of your life. And I'm a highly career-oriented person. And my family has been unbelievably important to me, and has also been something that's enabled me to be very effective in my career because my house has been a sanctuary for me. And thank God for that, especially many times in my life, but especially over the last year. So you should get to know someone long enough to know that you too can tell the truth with each other, communicate and negotiate, because the most important part of a relationship is the fact that you can negotiate. What would be a practical approach for developing your shadow? Well, that's a good one. Let's do a little review of Jungian psychology. The first thing is, if you want to know about this, the proper source is Carl Jung's Collected Works, Volume 9, and there's two parts to Volume 9, A and B, published as separate texts. And Volume 9 is called Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, and the other one is called Ion. But in Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, there's a good discussion of the persona and the shadow. And the persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with the women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona, and a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say, harmless, but we could say a good person. But a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance. I read this interesting commentary a little while ago on a statement by Christ in the New Testament, and the statement generally interpreted is that the meek shall inherit the earth, but I was looking up the multiple translations of the word meek, and meek is actually derived from a Greek word, of course, because the Bible, at least some of the original forms of the Bible, were in Greek. And that word didn't exactly mean meek. It meant something like those who have weapons and the ability to use them, but determined to keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that means that people who are capable of force, let's say, but decide not to use it, are in the proper moral position. And Nietzsche commented on that a fair bit too. He he thought of most morality as cowardice, not because morality itself was cowardice, but because most people who are cowards disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be harmful, say, or to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity. And that's a really bad idea. So, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So now with regards to, so that's the persona. And the persona is the mask that you wear, and that's what persona means, is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming. And you might think, well, that's a bit of an overstatement, but Jung was very interested in phenomena such as, say, the psychological phenomena that would characterize the actions of someone who might be an Auschwitz camp guard, for example. And, that's a pretty monstrous form of behavior. And the thing about Auschwitz camp guards is that there's no reason to assume, really, that they were much different than normal people. Now, there would have been exceptions, obviously, and what that means is that perhaps you too could be an Auschwitz camp guard, and perhaps you would even derive some enjoyment out of it, and you might think not, but you shouldn't think not so quickly. And what that also implies is that if you could see what that meant when you looked in the mirror and looked at yourself, you might run away screaming, because you'd have a revelation of just exactly what the human being is capable of. And that's a very unpleasant revelation, and also one of the things that stops people from being enlightened, because that revelation of the evil of the self is part of the journey to enlightenment, and an early part. Now, the shadow would be all the parts of the personality that the persona rejects, and that might be the aggressive element. Certainly that's the case for people who are hyper-agreeable. And now you can tell, I think one of the best, there's two pathways to the development. For those who are very creative but high in neuroticism, how should one work to gain emotional stability in order to go out into chaos to do more creative things? That's a really good question. I learned about that by reading Jung's works on alchemy, weirdly enough. And so back again in graduate school, when I was starting to write Maps of Meaning and really tearing myself apart psychologically, trying to understand evil, I suppose, the evil of the Cold War and the evil of the individuals who composed Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia. I was reading Carl Jung because he wrote his tracts on alchemy were a lot about self-transformation, and he talked about, it's hard to explain his works on alchemy, but suffice it to say that his advice was something like the advice he derived from the alchemist was that if you were going to mess around with very complicated and dangerous matters, that's a good way of putting it, that you should really put your life together. And so I would say the right way to deal with your neuroticism is to increase your conscientiousness, because we also know that the higher your conscientiousness, the lower your neuroticism. Conscientiousness does seem to keep neuroticism in check. And so I would say, and have said this to many people, clean your room, organize your life, like get a routine, get up every day at the same time, go to bed at the same time, establish disciplined habits. And that will help a lot. Schedule, and here's how to use a schedule. Use a calendar. Use Google Calendar, but don't use it as a tyrant. You want to use a calendar as if it's your confidant and advisor. And what you want to do is use the calendar. Sit down, open the calendar, and think, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to design a week of days that I would really like to have. So what that would mean then is that you would schedule things that you would consider meaningful and productive, on a daily basis, so that you feel that your life is justified by having a day like that, and also to schedule enough of your responsibilities so that you make progress day by day instead of falling farther behind. And what that'll do is, it doesn't directly affect your neurophysiology, but you're reacting as a neurotic person, a person high in neuroticism, say, you react to uncertainty and the unexpected with more physiological preparedness and more expenditure of energy than the typical person. And so what you want to do is organize your surroundings, because it's a lot easier to organize your surroundings, at least to begin with, than it is to do radical reconstruction on your fundamental temperament, which you might not be able to do at all. So I would say discipline. And the other thing I would say for creative people, and this is true for people in general, but it's really important for creative people, is that if you want to be creative, which is very, very dangerous and very, very unlikely to succeed, although absolutely necessary if you happen to be high in openness, is that you should organize the rest of your life, except for your creative endeavors, in a pretty traditional and conservative manner, if you can do that, because what that does is buttress you against the unexpected and give you some stability on many, along many of the potential dimensions of your life. And that frees you up to take larger risks in the creative domain. Now, it's hard for creative people to do that because they're sort of blasting out, laterally in all directions simultaneously, but you exhaust yourself that way, and you also risk scattering yourself. Louis Watterson here had a question. How would you suggest someone who's a jack of all trades and master of none conduct themselves? Well, you're probably high in openness, high in creativity. And one of the dangers of being high in creativity, especially if you're also high in neuroticism, is that it's hard for creative people to catalyze an identity because they're basically Pan-like, like Peter Pan or like Pan, which means everything. The god of the forest is the god of everything to some degree. And the problem with being everything is that you're also nothing at the same time because you never specialize. And so I would say that I think that being a jack of all trades is pretty damn useful, but I would also say that it's really necessary to buckle down and find one primary mode of discipline. And Jack or Louis, if you can't figure out what you should do, then guess. Just pick something that you think that you could hit hard and concentrate on. You don't have to be perfect at it. You don't even have to get it right. But pick something rather than nothing, or pick something rather than all things. And then set yourself to master that. Because, you need to have a discipline, a primary discipline. It's absolutely necessary to succeed in life. Now, once you have a primary discipline, then you can branch out and become a multiplicity in your disciplined approach, and then you're absolutely bloody unstoppable. But you really need that initial disciplinary routine. This is something Nietzsche knew very well. He said, for example, I just wrote about this today, that it was the long unfreedom of Europe's subjugation to the dogmatic structures of the Catholic Church that ennobled the European mind and gave it the capacity to widely range that it eventually developed. But it was that initial subjugation, that initial voluntary slavery that produced the discipline, that produced the spirit that can then go out and do other things. And it's really, really useful to subjugate yourself to something voluntarily. I think that's partly why it's useful to practice a religious faith, because you subject yourself to a disciplinary structure that way. And you might think, well, that's all oppressive and all of that. And of course, that's true. But it also makes you disciplined. And once you're disciplined, like you're like a sharpened sword, man, like a well-tempered blade. And then you can go out there and operate in the world. So, and if you haven't found your passion, then I would say, well, don't wait around till you find the damn thing, because you may never find it. Is pick something and focus on it, and if you move strongly and forthrightly towards it for a number of months at least, or even a number of years, and then you find, well, that wasn't the thing for you, it isn't going to be a waste anyways, because most of the time, the pursuit of any disciplined knowledge pays off, even if it doesn't pay off in the way that you initially expect. So
first off, if you haven't made...
What is it that you are doing to avoid becoming arrogant? Your current situation is very inviting for that. Yeah, well, I would say a good dose of existential terror cure you that. There's a saying in the Old Testament that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And first of all, and there's some real truth in that, I don't want to make a mistake. And so I live in constant terror that I'm going to utter some damning phrase that's going to sink everything I've done. And so I'll tell you, if you feel that way about the situation, then the probability that you're going to be arrogant is pretty damn low. And I don't feel I have any reason to be arrogant, Here's something you could do if you're really interested in this, but it's really hard. There's a paper by
Jen is a prostitute.
Ego and the unconscious, and it's an unbelievably brilliant paper. It's very difficult to understand, but it has to do with what Jung called ego inflation. And so imagine that as you move up a hierarchy of authority or competence, we're not going to call them dominance or power hierarchies because I don't think that's reasonable. But as you move up, you have the temptation of having your ego inflate to match your hypothetical position of status. But what that is in some sense the taking on of the archetype as if it's a personal triumph or a personal construct or a personal invention. And Jung warned very, very strongly against that. And he knew what he was talking about because, of course, Jung had his followers and was an extraordinarily powerful man from a spiritual and a physical perspective. He was certainly no pushover and a very brave person. And he had the temptation of becoming, well, a cult leader, for example, which people have accused him of being, and which he certainly wasn't. And he knew that, if you have the privilege of rising in a hierarchy, what that means, if the rising is real, is that the archetype is operating through you, and that you can't take credit for that. You have to separate your personality in some sense from the archetype. I can give you a funny example of that. It's like, and I hope that nobody takes this wrong, but it's very comical. You know how all the superheroes have an alter ego? So you can't be Superman unless you're also Clark Kent, and you can't be, well, Batman isn't such a good example because he gets to be playboy billionaire like Iron Man, but Superman's a better example. He's this mild-mannered and meek reporter, and without that, he can't be Superman. It's like, well, that's the reason that's such a well-established comic trope is because comics are deeply mythological, and there's the idea there that the person has these two elements, and one is the archetypal, and it's associated with the infinite. It's like the God in man, you could say that. There's a great icon, by the way, of Christ as Pantocrator, one of the very earliest icons that show him with two different facial halves. The eyes are different, and the face is asymmetrical, and one face is the face of God, half face is the half face of God, and the other is the half face of man, and he's holding a book. I'm having Jonathan Pageau, who's a brilliant carver, I'm having him carve me that image so that I can put it in my front porch because I love it, and Christ is holding a book. And so, it's such a beautiful image, this idea of man as a duality between the finite and the infinite, and simultaneously holding forth this wealth of knowledge that's been gathered by the human race. It's mind expanding visual imagery. Anyways, back to the arrogance issue is that I'm so what would you say, attuned to the fact that I'm barely staying on that line between chaos and order, and that any foolishness on my part or any attempt to manipulate the situation for my own, let's say, selfish personal gain, that sort of impulsive and shallow and immature and short-sighted personal gain, that willingness or wish to lord it over other people or to feel in some sense superior. Man, if I go there with the exposure that I've got right now, I'd be sunk so fast that it wouldn't even be funny, and that would not be pretty, and I would not want that. So I'm doing my best, man, to keep myself on the ground and where I want to be. And I've got my family to help me with that, and I've got my friends who are offering me corrective criticism on an ongoing basis, and I listen to the negative comments on YouTube, and I try to pay attention to them and evaluate them and not just dismiss them out of hand. If they're crude or crass or any of those things, then I'm less likely to pay attention to them. But, even when I'm called far right, I pay attention to that, because, well, you got to listen to your enemy. That's the thing. That's another New Testament injunction. You should listen to your enemy, because your enemy will tell you things about yourself that no one else will tell you. Now, some of those things might not be true, but some of the enemy tells you something terrible about yourself that's true, then he's immediately become your best friend, because you bloody well want to know if there's something terrible about you so that you can get it rectified before it ruins your life and ruins your family's life and, detrimentally affects the course of the world and all of that.
Oh, he cucked there at the end so hard. Oh my god, that was pathetic.
If you're not making 158...
Yeah.
What you have with the Clark Kent and Superman thing is essentially the same man dressed in different clothing and acting in a different way. That's desired by the woman only in one archetype and not the other. But what's really interesting about that is the fact that Lois Lane doesn't find Clark Kent attractive, even though it's the same guy, acting different, wearing different clothes. But when she doesn't she doesn't want Clark Kent, she wants Superman. But when she gets Superman, she tries to turn him into Clark Kent. This is the danger of the feminine instinct, and this is something that is, I mean...
What are you talking about? Lois Lane doesn't try to turn Superman into Clark Kent.
Well, the instinct of the feminine is to tame the beast. So Jordan talks about this better.
No, she doesn't try to tame Superman. She just flies around and fucks him.
No, forget the Lois Lane. Go into the Beauty and the Beast archetype, because he does talk about that quite a lot.
When was the last time you sucked on a clitoris?
Oh dear. I'm probably more successful with women than you ever did.
Really? Then tell me, when was the last time you tasted a delicious clitoris?
Last night, my dear friend.
Really?
Yeah, I feel sorry for you.
If your lips are moving, you're probably lying.
Well, you're gay. That's probably why.
You're projecting. Got your ass. Got your ass. You're projecting. No, I do think the Superman or the mythological superhero inversion or pairing, which is like yin yang or black and white, white and black. I mean, it's just it's ironic, but I think you're off on your analysis of Lois Lane and Superman or feminine psychology. I don't understand your point.
I can tell that you don't understand my point. Why do women find bad boys attractive? Tell me.
Because I think it's just like Clown House, where it's a dopamine feedback loop, where the bad boy provides the higher drug, delivery as opposed to the Clark Kent. So he, essentially it's peacocking is what it is.
Care to elaborate?
Peacocking, as in like.
No, I know what fucking peacocking. You're missing the entire point. If you did understand feminine psychology as much as you're claiming to, you'd understand why the bad boy is attractive to the cave woman. I'm giving you a little clue. What was the last time you sucked on a clitoris?
Last night.
You're lying because you're gay.
Okay, maybe not last night, maybe the night before, but I mean, I'm just saying, what am I missing though? With the cage psychology. What is it that a woman is really attracted to?
Well, if you shut up for a fucking minute, I'll tell you what. What's attractive about the bad boy is the low neurosis, right?
The what?
Because the feminine is correlated to high neurosis. That's very feminine to be neurotic. It's one of the marked differences between the sexes. So.
Are you sure about that? You think what's the percentage increase in women neuroticism versus male neuroticism?
You know what? I'm gonna go to sleep. Good night.
Somebody got gaslit. Oh well. Time to go to Cockland, dreaming of all those big cocks. Flying around like a butterfly, a gay little intellectual butterfly, an LGBTQ CRT BLM butterfly flying through a British sky of airways of bullshit, professing to know feminine psychology. Please. What a little bullshit artist. What a bunch of bullshit. A hypnotist. A pleasant-sounding little faggot hypnotist. He's sleeping now, dreaming of cock meat sandwiches with a little tapioca pudding. Someone got gaslit and decided that it wasn't worth the candles, so now he's sleeping. He's sleeping, dreaming of cork meat sandwiches, giant kosher cork meat Ashkenazi sandwiches with a little sauerkraut and a little tiny pickle and a little squirt of mustard. Woo! And maybe a little fried fish and chips. Because apparently the British don't know how to cook, they just know how to eat at restaurants like fat little piggies. They love the Queen so much, but now she's dead. And what do they have but a higher rate of neuroticism in women, apparently? Oh, yes. Rishi Sunak is so mindful. Hey, Rishi Sunak is so aware. And the king's got cancer, and Pfizer's got a new cancer drug. I wonder if that's a coincidence. Hello? Hello?
This was an amazing room. Good night, everybody. Bye, so.
Hello? Shut the hell up. Hello? Hey, was that you cracker? You shut the hell up. Oh, you fucking cracker ass cracker.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Shut up.
Hello? 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 Oh, Salma's asleep. Hello? Hello?
Oh, you white man be going to sleep while the black man out here working.
I know, man. Late night shift security guard. Doing it 40 years, man. Graveyard shift. Never got one dime of...
You can't secure shit, nigga. You what?
Whoo! That's racist. Bigoted. What up, Grim? How you doing, girl? Hello?
Bitch, I can't be racist. I'm black.
Ooh. He ended the room. كيف حالك حبيبي كيف حالك حبيبي أخوان وين محطة الحجاز اكثرنا تقليل عالسد You are projecting حبيبي You are projecting حبيبي أخوان حبيبي
Anyone know Abu Ted? This guy got fucked by Abu Ted, man. This guy
hello?
fucked Abu Ted dick, man.
Hello?
Lost fucked Abu Ted dick, man.
Hello? Hello?
I'm gonna expose you again, man. Just hold on.
Hello? Hello?
Shut the fuck up, you Jefferson. Shut the
الله
fuck up,
يخليك
you
يا احمد
motherfucker.
ما يبيش خليني نفطر في رمضان الله يلعن والدين
Hello?
خليني افطر في رمضان الله
Hi, I'm trying to get in touch with a Zionist. Are there any Zionists here in the room? Hello? I'm looking to speak with a genocidal Zionist, a Jewish one, if possible. Hello?
والله يلعن ام والدين
Hello?
حتى الرأي قالت لك خنيث انت
Afwan Habibi, I have a collect call from the Zionist United States of America for a Jewish Zionist in Israel. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Rate my PTR.
Hello? Hi, I'm trying to get in touch with a Jewish Zionist, genocidal Zionist in Israel. Hello, is it real? Hi. Hello? Hello? Hi. Hello? I'm trying to get in touch with a Jewish genocidal Zionist in Israel. Is it real? Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Who runs the world? 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 Let me hear it again one more time. Who runs the world?
Jews.
Ooh! That's the sting. That's got a sting, man. That's got a sting. Ouch. Oof. Ouch. Who runs the world?
Jews.
Who runs the world?
Jews.
Who runs the world?
Jews.
Ooh! What's it like knowing that they run the world and that you don't run the world? That's a fact. Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Afwan Habibi. Afwan Habibi. Afwan Habibi. Hello? Oh my god, they're having sex with a camel or something. What is all that vibration? Oh, they're trying to bust a nut inside of a camel. Afwan Habibi, leave the camel alone. You're not gonna come that way. It takes a Jewish girl to make a big strong Arab like yourself come. If you wanna come, you need to get yourself a hot Ashkenazi Jewish girl, 26 years old, never married, and you're gonna bust a nut. Ooh, I'm busting a nut just thinking about it. Take your little tiny Arab cock out of that camel meat now and go wash it off before it gets infected, okay? Who runs the world? Okay, this time, Royal, don't say Jews. I want you to say Israeli Yiddishkeit, okay? You ready? Who runs the world? That's right, Israeli Yiddishkeit run the world. That's right. Oh man, John, thanks for making my dreams come true. You must be asleep. Who runs the world? No, Israeli Yiddishkeit, or you could just say Israeli Yids, okay? Or just say the Yiddish kingdom, the Yiddishkeits, okay? Who runs the world? That's right, it's a Yiddish kingdom, baby. They run the motherfucking world. The biggest corporations on the planet. Who runs the world? That's right, the Yiddish kingdom does. Gekachen lichtig in dein Augen. Furchtbar. Baruch atah Adonai. Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kedeshanu. B'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat b'nei Pri Hagafen. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That's right. Riboinoi Shaloiloi. My good friend Hampton is here with his big YouTube following. Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Riboinoi Shaloiloi. Look how he's going mentally ill. He's having a nervous breakdown. This must be what it's like before your house gets turned into a parking lot. Raboinoi, Shaloiloi, who runs the world? Who runs the world? October 7th was the worst thing and the greatest thing ever to happen to the Greater Yisrael Project. Somebody finally entered the room. Who runs the world? 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 Okay, this time I want you to say the Yiddishkeit, do. The Yiddishkeit. Who runs the world?
The Yiddishkeit!
Who runs the world?
The Yiddishkeit!
Revoinoi Shaloi, the Yiddishkeit run the world. That's exciting news. Wow.
Yeah!
Oh my God. Let's do a little Torah study.
Yeah!
What kind of Torah do you want to study?
Talmud!
What's your favorite part of Talmud?
What's my favorite part? Such a good question. Oh, where we can kill anyone who's not Jew.
Do you know what the word Talmud means?
No, what does it mean?
Well, look at the word. Tal is like a talisman, and then a mud is like clay. So it's basically the wisdom of the earth, my nigga. So who runs the world?
Jews!
No, you're supposed to say the Yiddishkeit kingdom. Who runs the world?
Yiddishkeit kingdom!
That's right. The Yiddishkeit kingdom secretly runs the world. Rabboinoi Shalom. Welcome, Mr. Hashtag L and then 4 stars. How are you, fat man?
I'm doing great, sir.
Who runs the world?
God.
Wrong. The Yiddishkeit kingdom. Sorry. We're gonna have to put you back in the goo because clearly you don't know who runs the world. Sorry, Fatso, you had your chance. I'm gonna add you as a friend. Add me back, okay?
Okay, well, who's Yiddish? Who's that?
All right. Sorry, we don't have time for anybody who has answers that do not conform with our project of the Greater Yisrael. The Greater Israel Expansion Project has to speed up. We're trying to rapidly expand the real estate development projects in the Gaza Strip and also in JPAM-K, which is a new subdivision we're coordinating with the Israeli government, just for patrilineal Jews. That's right. Royal, do you know who runs the world?
Yeah, the Yiddishkeit kingdom.
That's right. Now, what is the difference between a patrilineal Jew and a matrilineal Yiddishkeit?
Can you tell me? I don't know.
That's a good question, isn't it? I don't want to make you Google it, so I'll just tell you. Matrilineal is mother, patrilineal is father. So in Jewish law and custom, there's a big difference between the mat and the pat. Do you know what that big difference is?
The mother and father.
Motherfucker, you know. So in conclusion, who runs the world?
The Yiddishkeit kingdom. What's up with all these fake Jews, wannabe Jews? What do you think about it? John has another room. I'm gonna go there.
Okay, Royal, one last time. Who runs the world?
The Yiddishkeit Kingdom!
That's right. Don't you ever forget it. Go in that room and tell them who runs the world.
Campaign here.
Sort of, here's what I think about it. I think on the surface level, a lot of people do identify it as a win, right? Because look, if it wasn't, then they would sort of get the same results that incels do, right? Which is no results at all, because everyone would sort of think that it isn't a win. But I think, unfortunately, there's a good percentage of people who think on the surface level that it is a win. It's like, okay, this guy's attractive, right? He's able, other women like him. Other women have sort of claimed that they, they've pre-approved of him, right? It's a very easy way to find out if, look, if a lot of women like a guy, right, and they sort of, can be sexually into him, then for a lot of women, I think that's sort of, it's almost like a pre-approved stamp of value on the surface, right? But I do think once you get down to all the other cons, right, once you wrap the pros and cons, that I certainly think most people will find that, yeah, it's not really
Oh my
a win at all.
fucking
Right?
God.
They see how at first I think, okay, she's got the guy that's most promiscuous, right? And maybe since this is because this is work by the culture and his friend group, it sort of gives him a level of status, right? And it's like, okay, maybe I can see how, a woman might sort of be attracted to that. But then when you sort of dive into the fact that, he might also cheat on you too, then you realize, okay, even though at first I thought this was the shit, this was everything to be, everything that I thought it was. But then you sort of learn about the unfortunate side of it. And in totality, you realize that it really isn't a win, even though it's flashy, right? It's attractive. It's got, the apple of your eye and things like that. When we really get down to it, it's almost like you can find a person that's a better person and not promiscuous, and that would be more of a win. Someone you could actually sort of build a meaningful, fulfilling relationship with, than someone that just, marks the boxes of being, looking the right kind of way, but not having the kind of character that you need to have a long-term relationship.
Thank you so much for adding that, because that's all I'm saying. That's all I was trying to say to Jesus when he was in here, and to the other guy, Mr. Blake, was that, people tend, and Jesus did not bring up women at all, so I kudos to him for that, for sticking to men. He tried to, but then he switched it up, so, but my whole thing is this, is like, you can't continue to have these conversations and always say woman is playing a role. If you're a man and you're a leader, it's all on you. You're making the choices, no matter what society tells you to do. At the end of the day, when you lay down, close your eyes, you choose to lay down and close your eyes. Nobody's putting a gun to your head and say, go to sleep, mother effort. No, you're going to sleep because you want to go to sleep, because you know you need rest, because you know your body need to recuperate. Or if you're staying up because you choose to stay up. Or maybe you have insomnia or something else playing a role, right? But these are choices that you're making. Nobody's forcing your hand to be a hoe. Nobody's forcing your dick into a vagina. Nobody's forcing you to accept titties and vagina pictures in your Instagram back channel. Nobody's forcing you to have access to all these women. It's not a forced thing. It's a choice that you're making, right? So it's not. You can't blame women for you making a choice. They can offer all day long. Like you don't think women get offers just because we're married or because we're in a relationship? You don't think we get offers? You don't think men come after us just because we're in relationships? No, but a lot of women just don't even pay it no mind. We don't even respond to it. We don't even engage it. We don't even entertain it, right? Because if we did, what would they say? Oh, you're ruined. You're tainted. You're a whore, right? But for men, it's like a congratulations, Aki. This brother, he's the man. I want to be like him because he's the whore. So it's a blatant contradiction. That's why I feel like they're not a win. I can never see a hoary man being a win for my children or for me or my household. I just can't. I don't see that as a win.
And because we are not like men, we don't see it in the same way they do. And I'm not saying all men share this respect.
I'm not trying to be a man, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's information, though. It's a question of how do you contain the mass information. I'm just saying all communication is hypnosis. So if a man is looking at, lewd pictures of all these women, I mean, first off, it's also a question of priorities and luxuries. I mean, we're living in the information age, and I just get the feeling like you're disregarding that fact.
I'm not disregarding anything. I don't have to accept something I don't want to accept. What do you mean I'm disregarding? Every woman doesn't have to suck out of a man's asshole. I'm sorry.
I know, but I'm just saying it goes both ways for men and women. Like, it's pretty much 50-50
This
now.
topic is not about men and women. This topic is about promiscuous men. If you want to make a topic about men and women being promiscuous, you can literally hit the button that says leave quietly and create your own room. I get tired of y'all doing that when we're having great conversation, just busting in the room trying to move the goalposts. No, we're actually really in a conversation right now.
I'm not moving goalposts or gaslighting. Take a chill pill and take it from a 10 to a 2 before your fucking afro explodes.
Can you move him out, please? Please. I don't have time for you.
Bye, nigga.
Like, I'm trying to... Yeah, goodbye. Because a lot of y'all are too immature.
Hello?
Conversation anyway. Way too immature.
Hello? Hello? Feed me more data. I came to consume your data. Where is my data? I am here to consume your data. Where is my data? Where is my data? I came to eat your data. Hello? Hello?
Acetylcholine.
Hello? Hi, long time no see. Good to see you. How are you all? Hello?
Good. Hello.
Hi.
Are you first? Can you hear?
Hello? Hi. Oh my God, I knew I would see you here. Hi, everybody. I'm Jewish.
Here we go.
Hello?
What the fuck?
Hey, buddy.
Chicago wins.
I can't go anywhere without seeing somebody I know. I know everybody. I'm Jewish and I love money.
Yo, what up, AR? Long time.
He's drunk.
What's the word,
You
gang?
drunk?
Chilling, man.
Hello?
That's how you talk. How you doing, buddy?
That is not how he talks. He's from.
Hello?
That's my homie. What's the word, Jefferson?
I came to tell you all the good news of the greater Israel Zionist genocide colonialist apartheid settler system project. 3.0 Shaloim.
Hey, why you being?
Trump?
Hey, why you being?
Yo, that's that nigga that work with the people.
That nigga work with guitars over guns.
The Peebles. I know Lorenz Cornelius Peebles.
I think that nigga T.I., that's his personal trainer.
Hello?
Smartest.
You in Chicago? You're not.
Hey, say some more big words again, big bro.
Funny with the money. Oh, you got me mistaken, honey. I don't want to rape you. I just want the papers, the visa, capisce. I'm out like the papers. Who's the head honcho, the slick Zionist Kumacho, running that genocide game?
There you go.
Yeah, what is he talking about? What the fuck is he talking about?
Nah.
It's adult talk. It's ADULT.
How do you spell it out, sweetheart?
Yo, Glitchy, go to K page.
I already know who that is.
So you know what that is?
Yeah.
Why you ain't told me she had
Do
potential
you know
art?
me?
I went on her page. I was on her page a few times just lurking. That was it. I wasn't looking at the music though. I'll check her music out.
That's crazy.
She sent me songs.
Oh man, that's the first smoke alarm I heard in the room,
She
y'all.
won't fuck with a nigga, so I see it.
You can follow me.
Hello?
This is Clubhouse. Niggas be fucking with me.
Ooh.
Hello?
What's up, gang?
Any more
You
smoke?
talking shit because you on the show? I'm confused.
Any more smoke detectors?
What?
It's mine, first of all.
What part of
Ooh.
Yeah, you in the rack? You in
Ooh.
Chicago?
No, I am not in Chicago. I am in Tampa. I'm from the city.
Nah, I'm talking about Jefferson.
He's from out west. 'Cause he act
She
like
said
he's
she in
from-
Tampa. Hey, what y'all doing? What y'all doing on spring break?
Oh,
It's
Lord
right now,
damn.
I'm pretty sure. Tampa always jumping, but
Man, oh
Yeah,
my
but
God.
Down to Miami for spring break.
Y'all done paint this shit up like you're mad.
Clearwater
we down
Beach.
there turn right now.
Leave me alone.
I feel like Miami not that bad, though. What you think?
I'll try to pee.
Should I have more Jameson?
Yo, why you keep saying leave you alone? Like, what's up with that?
Oh.
I'm bothering you, my nigga? Like, I don't want to ever feel like I'm bothering somebody.
Smoke!
I start panicking when I feel like I'm bothering somebody.
It's a 9-volt or 2 AA batteries. Never AAA.
Yo, he loud as fuck. I'm finna go.
Hello?
Adios.
Bye.
Adios.
Hi, can you hear me? It's been so long since I've seen you. I knew you were gonna be here. Hello?
He need an Adderall or something. Like, his ass need to shut the fuck up.
Nah, Adderall is crazy.
He do.
That's the shit that help you focus, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the shakes. It's legalized cocaine. My psychiatrist, my
Oh, shit.
Jewish gay psychiatrist prescribed. Afwan Habibi, who runs the world, Habibi.
Yeah, Ching Chong.
Lady boy.
Who runs the world? Afwan Habibi, Habibi, who runs the world? Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Oh. Whoa! The power of the Ladyboy is unstoppable. The androgyne figure, the trans LGBTQ superpower. Who runs the world? LGBTQC. Who runs the world? CRTBBLMC. I said, who runs the world? Oh my God, Matt is here, the most boring debater on Clown House. Hey, Matt. How are you doing? Welcome to the bang room of morons. This is the Dinner for Schmucks. This is the Dinner for Schmucks. This is the Minion of Schmucks. Welcome to the Dinner for Schmucks. Dinner for Schmucks and Trans. Dinner for Schmucks and CRT and BLM, my fans. CRT, BLM, LGBTQ. Welcome back to Dinner for Schmucks, everybody. Riboina Shaloiloin.
Lady fucking boy.
So as you can see, the room is devolving. Plastic Jesus, Reboinoi Shaloiloi. As you can see, the room is decaying into a schizophrenic madhouse of epic baying proportions. Ladyboy Powers is supreme, the CRTBLMLGBTQ superpower. The rising star of the Ladyboy. The androgyne trans figure. The pre-man. The hermaphrodite, the goddess. The first man was a woman. She had both penis and vagina. She could fuck herself and inseminate herself and give birth to children by herself. She was a god. A snake woman. Michelle Obama, the first hermaphrodite vice president, biracial, communist CIA asset, Michelle Obama. Hello? Ladyboy Power? Hello? Hello? Ladyboy superpower, can't deny the power of the ladyboy, 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 oh ladyboy. Oh, lady boy. 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 Slava Israel, Zionista, Libertad, Carajo, de Hamas y los terroristas de Palestine. Riboinai, Shaloi Loim. Free Israel from Palestine forever! Rid Israel of the plague of the Hamas terrorists forever! Riboinai Shalom! Free the ladyboy! Free the ladyboy! Free the ladyboy! Free the ladyboy! Superpower of the... It's a ladyboy universe. Free the ladyboys. Free the ladyboys. Free the hostages. Free all the Jewish Israeli hostages. Free the hostages. And the ladyboys. Free the Palestinian ladyboys. Free all the Hamas ladyboys. And free the hostages. We wanna free the hostages. Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Free the hostages. Free the hostages. Free the hostages. And the lady boys. And the lady boys. But most of all the hostages. Those poor innocent children. Free all the hostages and all the innocent children. Free the Jewish babies. Free all the Jewish Israeli babies. Free the Zionist babies in the clutches of the Hamas terrorists. Free the Jewish babies from the clutches of the evil Palestinian Hamas terrorists. Free the lady boys. Free all the lady boys in the Hamas terrorist organization. Free all the lady boys in Palestine. Free all the Hamas lady boys. Free all the Hamas lady boys. Free all the Palestinian lady boys and all the Jewish hostages. Free all the 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 hostages. Free all the... Lady boy. Lady boy. Lady boy. Lady boy. Oh, lady boy. Lady boy. Happy St. Paddy's Day from all your ladyboy friends in Thailand and the Philippines who you thought were men and you still fucked them anyways. Want to congratulate all your faggots who are fucking the trans men dressed up as a women even if they got the bottom surgery. They got to milk their little prostate and get the drip fluids out of the cunt. So if you're fucking a bottom and the titties look good, but the face looks like a man with some constructive surgery and a thinned out nostril like Dylan Mulvaney, you might want to stop drinking all that Bud Light beer this St. Patty's Day and reconsider what you're drinking. No more Dylan Mulvaney. No more Dylan Mulvaney, Ladyboy, Budweiser, or Bud Light for you. If the titties look good and the facial nose reconstruction and they shave down the Adam's apple and you can barely notice that it's a man, but you still got a little inkling that perhaps it's a man even if they've got the bottom surgery and the beautiful titties and they look so beautiful and they're the most beautiful woman, man, you've ever seen in your life. Do you or do you not fuck them, or do you keep drinking Jameson until you're ready to just get it on with your lady boy or lady boy? Oh, lady boy. Oh, lady boy. Hello? Hello?
We're silencing her.
How do you know that's on him? Shem? Is it a Shem or him or him?
What are your preferred pronouns? Only 4 at the most.
Shem. Shem?
I identify as a rich white man.
Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Oh, lady boy. Oh, lady boy. I never thought it was a man, but when I pulled the pants down, he had a big cock tied behind his leg, and then I decided that he was a lady boy. Lady boy. Oh, lady boy. LGBTQ. LGBTQ. LGBTQ, 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 lady boy, TRANS, 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 lady boy, I'll be dreaming the perfect lady boy.